means hi, my name is Rebecca, as in Mi'kmaq. This is Mi'kmaq territory. So I say, Jalasi, welcome, I'll do my best. This is Jabuktuk, Halifax, Great Harbor, right? So I'm going to tell you about the story about the time that I wasn't born Mi'kmaq. I became Mi'kmaq. So my dad, in order for me to do that, it's important that you understand where I came from. It's how we do things in our culture. So I was born to Patricia Thomas and Tim Thomas, now known as Red Feather Thomas, who is a residential school survivor. He went into residential school and spent 5 years there from the age of 5 to 10, lost his language, lost his culture, lost his connection to his community, to his elders, and to his children in the future. He stopped drinking when I was 15, and it was only then that I began to form a relationship with him. But when I was a child, I would get gift cards, and I would get dream catchers in the mail and beaded jewelry, and I would think to myself, Native culture is so beautiful. I wish I were Native, because I didn't understand that there was a connection. I just thought I was Rebecca. And the first time it ever occurred to me that I was different, that the world saw me differently, was also, unfortunately, the first time I ever experienced racism in my life. I was 14 years old. I was in grade 9, and my math teacher was pairing us up for assignments. Christy and Sean, Jimmy and Annika, Rebecca and the student who will remain nameless. And he exclaims in front of the class, "I ain't gonna work with no Indian." So I have to give so much credit to my superhero math teacher who brought us both out into the hallway, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you okay?" At the time, I didn't know how to articulate the fact that I was embarrassed and ashamed and angry, and I didn't know why. And I said I was fine, and he sent me inside. And he closed the door, and we could hear him tear a strip up that kid and tear it back down on the other side. The kid walked into the classroom, white as a sheet, hands shaking, and my teacher said, "This guy decided he wants to work by himself. Rebecca, you can join the group over here on your left." And that was the first time it occurred to me that maybe I was a little bit different. So then I went to university, and I started to take courses to learn about what it meant to be an Indigenous person. So at that time, I realized I was an Indian, but I wasn't Indigenous, I wasn't Mi'kmaq yet. I was an Indian. I had a card that says, "I am an Indian within the meaning of the Indian Act, Chapter 27. It expires every 10 years. Show me your ethnic cards that expire every 10 years. Show me your ethnicity has an expiration and a shelf date." You can't do that, can you? But we can. So I was an Indian. And then I learned about the Mi'kmaq people. I learned what it meant to be a Mi'kmaq person. You had to be born to Mi'kmaq people in Mi'kmaq territory, right? And then I read a book called Out of the Depths by Isabel Knockwood, and I called my dad and I said, "I read this book and it's about residential school. Weren't they horrible?" And my dad said, "Yeah, I know, Isabel. We were friends when we were in the schools together." I was 20 years old and I found out my dad went to residential school at that age. I had no idea. And so I went on, I did a master's. I started talking to Indigenous people, and the first time I ever felt Mi'kmaq was when I was speaking to an elder at the Member 400 Mauyomi, the big celebration that had happened in 2010, and I was saying to him, very downtrodden, I said, "Well, I don't speak the language because my father," and he interrupted me, and he said, "Your language." And it was the first time when I had Ilnu, when I had Mi'kmaq people see me as Mi'kmaq, that I started to realize that being Indigenous, being Mi'kmaq, wasn't blood quantum. It wasn't genetics. Yes, I look like my dad. I have long dark hair and dark eyes, and I tan easily, though I am still a disarming shade of brown. Being Mi'kmaq came from in here and in your gut and how you see the world. And all of the education, all of the formal education I had had, I could tell you about ceremonies, I could tell you about the betrothal year, I could tell you about treaty, did not amount to being Mi'kmaq. Being Mi'kmaq meant sweating it out, meant forgoing to tea with your aunties. It meant laughter until you cried because there was nothing else to do when your world is controlled from the top down and your people are impoverished, and yet you still find a way to laugh. That is what being Mi'kmaq was. So being the well-educated yet mouthy individual that I am, I decided to write a poem about all of the formalized education I had ever received. And it's called What I Learned for the Cost of an Education. Thousands of dollars have been paid so I can put 4 letters after my name. As if my name as is insufficient to be trusted, it must be stuffed, plumped, and tufted with abstract ideas encrusted on my brain. B.A., Bachelor of Arts, as in be a sheep trained to bleat what the prof seeks for his pay. M.A., Master of Arts, as in I am a person trained to think while letting the reality of my life sink in. So what have I earned with all my years learned? I can write good, I mean well. I can spell success without doubt. I can spell success without debt, but those who, their future's a game of Russian roulette, their payments forever set. In anatomy and biology, I learned the typography of the cell. My short stint in science taught me that reliance, compliance, and courtesy is an insurgency on my urgency to be loved. You see, receptors can be fooled and tricked. Chemicals contradict the scripts, keep you safe. A place once guarded, now bombarded, a fall too far from grace. Because in my desperation, I let him in to feel pretty. I bent to his whim. My heart turned to tin as he explored the skin of another, and my request to be faithful all but smothered him. If you ask me, he had a bit too much mothering. Math and stats taught me that correlation doesn't always equal cause. For example, cancer and cure both start with a C, but that does not mean they are related. And so my goodbye belated, my soul berated, because my newfound hobbies of booze and getting naked didn't realize that the creator was taking back what he'd created, and to this day, I'm ashamed of it. Anthropology taught me that really, it's actually you and not me. That pain runs deeply, sometimes generationally, but sticking it out taught resiliency. Success doesn't come conveniently, and that I can be loved so completely, even the hardest moments pass easily. I learned nothing from psych. Not because I wasn't able, it simply didn't fit in my timetable, and I might be a little unstable. I could spend hours picking myself apart, yet in spite of never opening a textbook, I consider myself an expert on matters of the heart. Sound thought needs practice for the firing synapses and access for the logic that knows he's gone. But my hope, a star wished upon, waits for him to respond that he's proud, sitting up there watching me from the clouds amongst the crowds, and my heart is sated. Because for nearly 30 years, he waited for his true love, whose health disease never discriminated. Her breasts were excavated tumors, her lungs cultivated. Needless to say, me and my grandmother never were acquainted. Now, I'm not trying to knock a good education. Everybody needs to unlearn the misinformation brought on by societal placation. But collecting letters after your name does not get you the keys to the kingdom, poverty, freedom, or a cultural anthem. Your credibility is held at a degree's ransom. No school provides a venue to gain perspective and shift. To gain perspective gives you time to shift your paradigm and adjust your context while engaging in safe, consensual, and let's all admit, sometimes experimental dorm room sex. What they teach you puts you in situ to change the game in which you won your truth, the one you use to operate when you cooperate to exonerate history, because if there's one thing we all love, it is consistency. Learning is a process. I don't know everything, and what I haven't learned yet isn't my fault, which is precisely why I store my degrees next to my salt. Thank you. Laureate. Thank you.